Marcus had never believed in anything he couldn't see with his own eyes, which made the moment his 8-month-old nephew reached toward the Renaissance painting hanging in his gallery all the more unsettling. The baby, little Samuel, had been fussing in his sister's arms all morning, crying through the exhibition opening, drawing annoyed glances from the collectors who had paid thousands just to attend. But when they passed by the centerpiece of the collection, a supposed Caravaggio worth $12 million, Samuel went completely silent. His tiny hand stretched out, fingers splayed wide, and the moment his palm made contact with the canvas, something happened that Marcus would replay in his mind for years to come. The baby's eyes rolled back, just for a second, and he let out a piercing wail that echoed through the marble halls of the gallery. Everyone turned to look. Someone laughed nervously. Marcus's sister, Claire, tried to comfort Samuel, but the baby kept pointing at the painting, his face twisted in what could only be described as distress. "That's fake," Marcus thought suddenly, the words appearing in his mind unbidden. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the absurd notion. But Samuel's reaction had planted a seed of doubt that he couldn't ignore. The collectors moved on, champagne glasses clinking, but Marcus stood frozen, staring at the painting he had spent 2 years authenticating, 2 years betting his entire reputation on. He had hired the best experts in the world. Carbon dating, pigment analysis, provenance research, everything had checked out. But Samuel's tiny hand had touched it for 3 seconds, and now Marcus felt sick to his stomach. The rest of the opening was a blur. Marcus smiled mechanically, answered questions about the collection, accepted congratulations on his coup in acquiring such a masterpiece. But inside, he was spiraling. After the last guest left, he found Claire in the back office, feeding Samuel a bottle. The baby was calm now, his blue eyes half closed in contentment. Marcus sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. Claire looked at him with concern. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't know how to explain what he was thinking without sounding insane. He watched Samuel drink, watched those innocent eyes blink slowly, and he made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, Marcus hired a private authenticator, someone outside his usual network, someone with no stake in the painting being real. Dr. Elena Sokolov arrived 3 days later, a stern Russian woman with 40 years of experience and a reputation for brutal honesty. She spent 2 days examining the Caravaggio with equipment Marcus had never seen before. He didn't tell her about Samuel. How could he? How could he say that a baby's touch had made him doubt millions of dollars worth of expertise? On the 3rd day, Elena called him into the gallery after hours. Her face was grave. She had laid out photographs, chemical analyses, microscopic details across the conference table. "Mr. Hartley," she said, her accent thick with tension, "this painting is a forgery. A very good forgery, perhaps the best I have ever seen, but a forgery nonetheless. The pigments are correct, yes, but they were artificially aged. The canvas is from the period, but the painting itself is no more than 15 years old. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to fool you." Marcus felt the room tilt. $12 million. His reputation. The collectors who had already placed bids. He slumped into a chair, his mind racing through the implications, the lawsuits, the scandal. But underneath the panic was something else, something that made his hands shake. Samuel had known. Somehow, impossibly, that 8-month-old baby had known. He thanked Elena, paid her fee, and asked her to keep her findings confidential until he could sort out the legal mess. Then he drove straight to Claire's apartment. She answered the door with Samuel on her hip, surprised to see her brother in the middle of a workday. Marcus didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need to test something," he said. "Can I borrow Samuel for an afternoon?" Claire frowned, protective instinct kicking in. But Marcus explained about the painting, about the forgery, about his theory. She thought he had lost his mind. "Marcus, babies don't detect fake art," she said slowly, as if explaining to a child. "He cries at everything. Last week he cried at a banana." But Marcus was insistent, almost desperate. And finally Claire agreed, if only to prove her brother wrong, and maybe get him to see a therapist. Marcus drove them to a private collector's home in the hills, a man named Richard Chen, who owned one of the finest art collections on the West Coast. Richard was an old friend, and when Marcus called asking for a favor, he agreed without hesitation. They met in Richard's private gallery, a climate-controlled wing of his mansion that housed works by Monet, Picasso, Matisse, and dozens of other masters. Richard greeted them warmly, amused by the sight of Marcus carrying a baby through his collection. "What's this about?" he asked, smiling. Marcus explained his theory, watching Richard's expression shift from amusement to skepticism to something like fascination. "All right," Richard said finally. "I'll play along. Let's see what your little nephew can do." He led them to a Monet, a beautiful water lilies piece that he had purchased at auction for $8 million. Marcus held Samuel up to the painting, the baby's hand reaching out naturally, drawn to the colors. Samuel's fingers touched the canvas, and nothing happened. He gurgled happily, patting the surface like it was a game. Claire shot Marcus a look that said, "I told you so," but Marcus wasn't discouraged. He moved to the next painting, a Picasso from the Blue Period. Again, Samuel touched it. Again, nothing unusual happened. They went through 6 paintings, and with each one, Marcus felt his theory crumbling, felt the weight of his own desperation settling on his shoulders. Maybe he really was losing his mind. Maybe the stress of the forgery had broken something in him. Then they reached a small Vermeer, a quiet domestic scene that Richard had inherited from his father. Marcus held Samuel up, barely hoping anymore, and the baby's hand touched the frame. Immediately, Samuel's body went rigid. His eyes widened, then rolled back, and he let out a scream that made everyone in the room jump. Claire grabbed for her son, but Marcus held firm, watching Samuel's reaction with a mixture of horror and vindication. The baby was pointing at the painting, his little arms shaking, his face red with distress. Richard went pale. "That's impossible," he whispered. "That painting has been in my family for 60 years. My father bought it directly from a private estate in Holland." Marcus lowered Samuel, letting Claire take him, the baby immediately calming in his mother's arms. Richard was staring at the Vermeer like he had never seen it before. "I need to have it tested," he said quietly. And he did. 3 weeks later, the results came back. The Vermeer was a forgery, likely painted in the 1960s by a master forger who had fooled collectors across Europe. Richard was devastated, but he was also grateful. If Marcus hadn't brought Samuel, he would have passed the painting to his daughter, continuing the lie for another generation. Word spread quickly through the private collector network. Marcus didn't share the full truth, he couldn't, but he began offering a new service, a final verification before major purchases. He would bring his nephew, just a quick visit, nothing official. Claire was reluctant at first, worried about exposing Samuel to something she didn't understand. But Marcus convinced her it was important. They could help people, save them from fraud, from the heartbreak of discovering their treasures were lies. And there was money in it, substantial money, enough that Claire could quit her job and focus on raising Samuel. Over the next year, Samuel's gift became undeniable. He could detect forgeries that fooled the most advanced technology, that passed every chemical test, every expert scrutiny. He was never wrong. When his hand touched a genuine masterpiece, he was calm, sometimes even delighted. But forgeries made him scream, made his little body tense with something that looked like pain or fear. The pattern was consistent across every style, every period, every artist. A genuine Rembrandt made him coo with fascination. A fake Klimt made him wail. It didn't matter if the forgery was crude or masterful. Samuel's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Marcus kept detailed records, documenting every painting Samuel touched, the reaction, and the subsequent verification. He filled notebooks with observations, trying to understand the mechanism behind the gift. Did Samuel see something invisible to others? Did he feel some vibration or energy? Was it chemical, biological, supernatural? The questions multiplied, but answers remained elusive. Specialists came to study him, neuroscientists and physicists, art historians and psychologists. Dr. Jennifer Walsh from MIT spent 3 months running tests, measuring Samuel's brain activity while he interacted with both real and fake artworks. The scans showed unusual activity in his visual cortex when he touched forgeries, patterns that didn't appear with genuine pieces. But she couldn't explain why or how his brain was making these distinctions. It was as if Samuel's neurons could analyze and compare information that wasn't consciously available, processing data about age, materials, technique, and intention in milliseconds. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a physicist from Tokyo, theorized about quantum coherence. suggesting that authentic old artworks might retain some kind of measurable signature from their creation, a pattern in how their molecules had settled over centuries that modern forgeries couldn't replicate no matter how skilled the forger. He proposed that Samuel was somehow sensitive to these quantum-level differences, though he admitted the theory was speculative at best. A child psychologist named Dr. Ruth Martinez took a different approach, spending hours simply observing Samuel interact with art in natural settings. She noticed that he seemed happiest around genuine pieces, that he would stare at them for long periods, his eyes tracking details with unusual focus for a baby. Forgeries, by contrast, seemed to cause him genuine distress, as if they offended some deep sense of rightness that he possessed. She wrote a paper suggesting that Samuel might have an innate aesthetic sense operating at a level most humans never develop, a pure instinct for authenticity that civilization and learned behavior usually override as children grow. Whatever the explanation, the implications were staggering. Museums began whispering about hidden forgeries in their collections, pieces that had been accepted as genuine for decades or even centuries. Private collectors who had built their reputations on their collections faced the terrifying possibility that their treasures might be exposed as frauds. The art market, already secretive and insular, became even more paranoid. Marcus received offers, both legitimate and otherwise. A consortium of European museums wanted to hire Samuel full-time to systematically review their collections. Marcus declined, unwilling to turn his nephew into a commodity. A Russian oligarch offered $5 million for just one afternoon of Samuel's time to verify a private collection that included supposed works by Leonardo, Raphael, and Michelangelo. Again, Marcus refused. He had seen how people looked at Samuel now, not as a child, but as a tool, a means to an end. It made him sick. Claire struggled with the attention more than anyone. She was a single mother who had been working as a paralegal, living a quiet life, and suddenly her son was the subject of international fascination. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Strangers approached them at the park, asking if they could see Samuel's gift in action. One woman grabbed Samuel's hand and tried to press it against a painting she had brought, convinced it was a lost Vermeer and desperate for validation. Claire had to get a restraining order. The stress was taking its toll, and Marcus could see it in his sister's face, in the way she held Samuel a little tighter, in the exhaustion in her voice when they talked on the phone late at night. Marcus didn't care about the explanation. He cared about protecting Samuel and using this gift responsibly. He hired a lawyer to establish clear boundaries, to create contracts for any future testing that would prioritize Samuel's well-being over commercial interests. He set up a trust fund with the money they had made from the legitimate consultations, ensuring that Claire and Samuel would be financially secure regardless of what happened. And he started planning for the day when Samuel might need to disappear from public view, when the attention might become too dangerous or intrusive to continue. But not everyone had pure intentions. Viktor Koslov was one of the world's most successful art dealers, a man whose empire was built on authenticating and selling works that museums and private collectors trusted implicitly. His gallery on Fifth Avenue was legendary, a place where billionaires and institutions came to acquire pieces that would define their collections. But beneath the polished surface, beneath the champagne openings and the glowing press coverage, Victor's business was built on a foundation of elaborate fraud. When he heard about the baby who could detect forgeries, he saw a threat unlike anything he had faced in 30 years of operating in the shadows. If Samuel's ability became widely known, if testing became standard practice, Victor's entire network of carefully placed forgeries would be exposed. He had spent 3 decades building relationships with the world's most talented forgers, artists whose skills were so refined they could recreate the techniques of old masters with precision that fooled carbon dating and pigment analysis. He had inserted fake masterpieces into legitimate collections through a web of false provenances, forged documents, and corrupted experts. There were Vermeers in Dutch museums that Victor had commissioned, Caravaggios in Italian private collections that had never seen the inside of a 17th century studio, a supposed Goya in the Prado that had actually been painted in a warehouse in Barcelona in 1997. The network was vast, the deception profound, and this baby could destroy everything with a simple touch. Victor had built his fortune on these forgeries, had used the money to acquire legitimate pieces, to build influence, to become untouchable. His clients included heads of state, tech billionaires, old money families whose art collections had been passed down for generations and who would be devastated to learn that their treasures were fraudulent. He had created a house of cards so elaborate, so convincing, that even he sometimes forgot which pieces in his own collection were real. And now, a 1-year-old child threatened to bring it all crashing down. Victor arranged a meeting with Marcus under the guise of a potential partnership. He flew Marcus to New York first class, put him up at the plaza, treated him like royalty. They met at Victor's gallery in Chelsea, though it was just a satellite location. A public face for the private empire he ran from unmarked warehouses and climate-controlled vaults scattered across 3 continents. The gallery was a sleek space showcasing only the finest works, each one genuine, each one a testament to Victor's supposedly impeccable taste and expertise. Victor himself was charming in person, sophisticated and cultured, a man who spoke 5 languages and could discuss art history with the depth of a tenured professor. He wore custom Italian suits, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile warm and practiced. He offered Marcus a percentage of his business if he would use Samuel's gift to pre-screen acquisitions before Victor purchased them. The proposal seemed legitimate, even generous. Victor talked about the importance of authenticity, about protecting collectors from fraud, about how they could work together to elevate standards across the industry. He showed Marcus financial projections, proposed contracts, testimonials from satisfied clients. It was a masterclass in persuasion, and for a moment, Marcus almost believed it. But Marcus had learned to trust his instincts over the past year, had learned that the art world was filled with people who presented one face while hiding another. Something about Victor made him uneasy. Something in the way the dealer's eyes didn't quite match his smile, in the way he asked very specific questions about Samuel's range and reliability, about whether the baby could be fooled or trained to give false negatives. Marcus felt like he was being assessed, measured for weaknesses, and he didn't like it. He politely declined, saying Samuel was too young, that they needed to understand his ability better before commercializing it, that Claire was uncomfortable with anything that felt like exploitation. Victor smiled, but his eyes went cold for just a fraction of a second before he recovered his composure. He thanked Marcus for coming, showed him out personally, shook his hand with genuine seeming warmth, and wished him luck. But as Marcus's car pulled away, Victor stood at his gallery window, watching until the vehicle disappeared around a corner, his face now empty of charm, calculating and dangerous. 2 weeks later, Claire's apartment was broken into. She came home from a play date with Samuel to find her door ajar, the lock expertly picked. Nothing was stolen, which somehow made it worse than if thieves had taken her laptop or jewelry. Instead, the intruder had focused on Samuel's room. His crib had been moved away from the wall. His toys were scattered in patterns that seemed deliberate rather than ransacked. The books on his shelf had been pulled out and restacked, but not all of them, just specific ones. It felt like someone had been searching for something, or leaving a message, or both. The violation of it made Claire's hands shake as she called the police, then Marcus. He arrived before the officers did, found his sister sitting on the couch with Samuel clutched to her chest, the baby oblivious to the fear radiating from his mother. Marcus walked through the apartment, his jaw tight, examining the disturbance with growing anger. This wasn't random. This was targeted. This was someone sending a message that they could reach Samuel anytime they wanted. The police filed a report, but offered little hope of catching whoever had done it. No forced entry beyond the picked lock, no fingerprints, no security footage from the building's aging camera system. It was a professional job, clean and untraceable. Marcus hired security immediately. Bodyguards for both Claire and Samuel, a former Secret Service agent named David Chen, who took the threat seriously and moved into Claire's spare room. He also installed a state-of-the-art security system, cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks, everything short of moving them to a safe house. Then the threat started, anonymous emails suggesting that exposing Samuel publicly would put him in danger, that certain people would pay handsomely to make sure the baby's gift never threatened their business interests. The messages were vague but menacing, always sent from disposable accounts that couldn't be traced. One email included a photograph of Samuel at the park, taken from a distance, with a caption that read, "Such a precious gift. It would be a shame if something happened to him." Another included a list of addresses, Claire's apartment, Marcus's gallery, the foundation office they had just opened, even Claire's parents' house in Connecticut where they sometimes visited. The message was clear. We know where you are. We can reach you anywhere, and we're watching. Marcus realized they had stepped into something bigger than authentication, into a world where billions of dollars in fraudulent art were protected by people who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. The scale of it was staggering when he really thought about it. Every major museum in the world probably housed forgeries they didn't know about. Every serious collector had likely been fooled at least once. The entire ecosystem of the art market, from auction houses to private dealers to authentication experts, had financial incentives to avoid asking too many questions. A painting certified as genuine was worth millions. Questions reduced value, created doubt, killed sales. And in that environment, someone like Samuel was an existential threat. He considered going to the police, to the FBI's art crime division. But what would he tell them? That his nephew could psychically detect fake paintings. That a major dealer had threatened them through anonymous emails and break-ins that left no evidence. They would think he was insane, or running some kind of elaborate scam to manipulate the art market. He had no proof that Victor was behind the threats, just instinct and timing. And even if he could convince law enforcement to investigate, what could they do? Victor was careful, connected, protected by layers of legitimate business and powerful clients who would vouch for him. The man had sold art to senators, to foreign ministers, to people who could make investigations disappear with a phone call. Going through official channels felt like walking into a trap. Instead, Marcus decided to go public, to protect Samuel by making him too visible to disappear. The logic was simple. If everyone knew about Samuel's gift, if it was documented and verified by independent witnesses, then he couldn't be quietly eliminated or discredited. The truth would be out there, preserved in newspapers and academic journals, witnessed by too many people to suppress. It was a gamble, exposing Samuel to even more attention, but Marcus believed it was the safer path than trying to hide. He contacted a journalist he trusted, Amanda Price from the New York Times, someone he had known for years who had a reputation for thorough investigation and ethical reporting. Amanda had covered art world scandals before, had exposed auction fraud and provenance fabrication, and she understood the stakes. When Marcus first approached her with the story, she was skeptical, naturally. "A baby who can detect forgeries with a touch?" she said over coffee at a cafe in Midtown, her voice pitched between amusement and disbelief. "Marcus, that sounds like something from a fantasy novel. Do you know how that sounds?" But Marcus had anticipated her reaction. He showed her his documentation, the records of every painting Samuel had tested, the subsequent expert verifications, the pattern of perfect accuracy. He introduced her to Dr. Walsh, who shared her neurological findings. He offered to let her design her own test, under conditions she controlled, with paintings she selected. No tricks or manipulation. Amanda agreed, intrigued despite herself, and she spent the next 2 weeks preparing the most rigorous demonstration she could devise. She contacted 5 different private collections, museums and auction houses, requesting access to specific paintings. She chose pieces across different periods and styles, some with rock-solid provenance and others with questionable histories that had never been definitively resolved. She didn't tell anyone except her editor which ones she suspected were genuine and which might be forgeries. She arranged for independent experts to examine each piece before and after the test. She brought a photographer, a videographer, and a notary to document everything. And then they met in a neutral location, a rented gallery space in Brooklyn, white walls and perfect lighting, with Claire and Samuel, Amanda and her team, and David Chen standing watch by the door. Samuel was 14 months old now, walking with wobbly confidence, chattering in the half-words of early language development. He wore a blue outfit that Claire had picked out, and he seemed completely unaware of the weight of what was about to happen. One by one, Marcus held Samuel up to each painting, lifting him so his small hand could reach the surface. The first was a Renoir, a vibrant scene of people in a garden, authenticated by 3 major experts and hanging in a private collection for 40 years. Samuel touched it and immediately smiled, that pure, delighted expression babies get when they see something beautiful. He patted the canvas gently, made a happy sound, and reached out like he wanted to touch the brushstrokes more closely. Amanda made a note, her expression neutral, not revealing whether this matched her expectations. The second was also real, a Degas ballerina, delicate and graceful. Samuel studied it with quiet fascination, his eyes following the dancer's form, his hand resting on the frame for a long moment before Marcus lowered him. Again, calm, engaged, content. The third painting was brought out, a supposed Monet water landscape that had been in a wealthy family's possession for 60 years, purchased through a dealer in Paris, who had since died. The provenance was solid, but not bulletproof, the kind of piece that experts were confident about without being absolutely certain. Marcus lifted Samuel toward it, and the baby's reaction was immediate and dramatic. His body went rigid, his eyes widened in what looked like shock or fear, and he let out a scream that echoed through the gallery space. He thrashed in Marcus's arms, clearly distressed, his face reddening with the effort of his crying. Claire moved forward instinctively, but Marcus held firm, lowering Samuel away from the painting and passing him to his mother. The baby calmed almost instantly once he was away from the Monet, burying his face in Claire's shoulder, his little body shaking. Amanda's photographer captured the entire sequence. The calm before, the moment of contact, the distress, the recovery. The notary documented the time, the painting, the reaction, her pen moving across her forms with official precision. Amanda herself said nothing, but Marcus could see the shift in her expression, from professional skepticism to something more complex, something that might have been belief or might have been fear of what this meant. The fourth was genuine. The fifth, another forgery, produced the same distressed reaction. Amanda checked her notes, her hands shaking slightly. "He's 5 for 5, she said quietly. "Every single one correct." The article ran 3 days later, front page of the arts section, with photos of Samuel and a detailed account of the demonstrations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Some people called it a hoax, a publicity stunt. But others, collectors who had used Samuel's gift privately, came forward to confirm his accuracy. Museums reached out, asking for his help in verifying their collections. And Viktor Kozlov went silent, his gallery suddenly closing for renovations, his inventory being quietly reviewed by independent experts. The art world was in upheaval. Auction houses began implementing new protocols, collectors demanded secondary verification, and several high-profile forgeries were exposed in the wake of Samuel's revelation. Marcus's gallery became the center of a movement toward greater transparency and authentication standards. But for Marcus, the real victory was smaller and more personal. One evening, he sat with Claire and Samuel in her apartment, watching the baby play with blocks on the living room floor. Samuel was almost 2 now, walking and babbling, his gift still present, but his life otherwise normal. Claire looked at her brother, the stress of the past month showing in the lines around her eyes. "Do you think he'll hate us for this one day?" she asked. "For making him famous? For using his gift?" Marcus thought about it carefully. "I think we gave him a choice by going public," he said. "We made it so no one could exploit him in secret, so he wasn't just a tool in someone's collection. When he's older, he can decide what he wants to do with this ability. He doesn't owe anyone anything." Claire nodded, wanting to believe that, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching Samuel stack his blocks higher and higher until they tumbled down, the little boy laughing at the destruction he had caused. Outside, the art world continued to change, scandals breaking weekly as Samuel's example inspired more rigorous testing, more questions about provenance and authenticity. Viktor Kozlov was eventually arrested after a former employee turned informant, exposing a network of forgers and corrupt dealers that had operated for decades. Millions of dollars in fake art was seized, and the industry began a long process of rebuilding trust. Marcus closed his gallery, not because of the scandal with the Caravaggio, but because he wanted to focus on something more meaningful. He started a foundation dedicated to art authentication and education, using Samuel's story to highlight the importance of scientific rigor and ethical dealing in the art market. Claire became the foundation's director, managing the research grants and educational programs they funded. And Samuel grew up knowing he was different, but also knowing he was protected and valued. His parents and uncle made sure he understood that his gift was his own, that he could choose to use it or not, that his worth as a person had nothing to do with what his hands could detect when they touched a painting. They wanted him to have a normal childhood as much as possible, to play and learn and make friends without the weight of his ability defining every interaction. Claire enrolled him in a regular preschool where the other parents didn't know about his gift, where he was just Samuel, a bright kid who loved dinosaurs and building blocks. He made friends with a girl named Maya, who shared her crayons with him, a boy named Jackson who was obsessed with trucks, a quiet kid named Aiden who liked to read in the corner during free time. Samuel played on the playground, got scraped knees, cried over spilled juice, all the normal experiences of early childhood. But there were moments when his difference showed through. Moments that reminded Claire and Marcus that Samuel would always exist in two worlds. When the preschool took a field trip to a children's museum, Samuel stood in front of a small art gallery section, studying the paintings with an intensity unusual for a 4-year-old. His teacher later mentioned that he had spent 20 minutes staring at one particular piece, a landscape by a minor impressionist, completely absorbed in a way that seemed almost adult in its focus. He didn't cry or react negatively. He had learned to manage his responses in public, but Claire could see the concentration in his face when she picked him up that day, could tell that he had felt something about those paintings that his classmates hadn't. As he grew older, Samuel started asking questions about his ability, trying to understand why he felt things that others didn't. Claire and Marcus answered as honestly as they could, without overwhelming him with the complexity and danger that had surrounded his early years. They told him he had a special sensitivity to art, that he could tell when something was real or fake in ways other people couldn't. They explained that this had helped catch some bad people who were tricking others, that his gift had done good things in the world. But they also emphasized that he didn't have to use it, that he could just be a kid, that grown-ups would take care of the hard stuff. Samuel seemed to accept this, seemed content to let his ability exist in the background of his life rather than the foreground. He developed other interests, became passionate about science, about how things worked and why. He took apart old electronics with Marcus, learning about circuits and batteries. He grew vegetables in a small garden with Claire, fascinated by the process of seeds becoming plants. He was a normal kid with an abnormal gift, and somehow against all odds, they had managed to give him room to be both. On Samuel's 5th birthday, Marcus gave him a special present, a small sketch pad and a set of colored pencils, professional quality, but sized for small hands. "You don't have to detect art," he said, kneeling down to Samuel's level in the living room, where birthday decorations still hung from the ceiling and cake crumbs scattered the table. "You can create it too. You can be whatever you want to be. You can be an artist, or a scientist, or a teacher, or anything else that makes you happy. This gift you have, it's part of you, but it's not all of you. Do you understand?" Samuel smiled, that beautiful, uncomplicated smile of a child who feels loved and understood, and he took the pencils with genuine excitement. He immediately sat down and started drawing, his little hand moving across the page with surprising confidence for his age. He drew his mother, getting the proportions wrong in the endearing way children do, giving her huge eyes and a smile that stretched across half her face. He drew his uncle, tall and lanky, with carefully detailed glasses that Marcus actually wore, and he drew himself standing between them, all three holding hands, a triangle of family rendered in bright primary colors. It wasn't sophisticated, wasn't technically skilled, just a child's drawing full of feeling and love, but it was genuine, utterly authentic, created from scratch, rather than copied or forged or misrepresented. Marcus looked at it and felt his throat tighten with emotion, understanding on a deeper level what they had been fighting for all these years. Not just to expose forgeries or protect the art market, but to protect this, the simple, genuine expression of a child who felt safe enough to create. He hung the drawing on the wall of the Foundation's office, right next to the more formal pieces they had acquired over the years, and he had a small placard made for it that read, "Authenticity Matters in Art and in Life." Created by Samuel Hartley, age 5, original and irreplaceable. The drawing stayed on that wall for years, even as the Foundation grew and moved to larger offices, even as Samuel grew from a child to a teenager to a young man. It became something of a mascot for their mission, a reminder that authenticity wasn't just about market value or historical accuracy, but about protecting the real from the fake in all its forms. The Foundation continued its work, expanded its reach, funded research that led to better authentication technologies. They helped develop new chemical analysis techniques, trained a generation of art historians in rigorous verification methods, advocated for international standards in provenance documentation. The art world slowly became more transparent, more honest, though there would always be forgers and dealers willing to take advantage of people's desire to own something beautiful and rare. Viktor Kozlov's network had been extensive, and it took years to fully unravel. Museums and collectors around the world discovered forgeries in their collections, pieces they had treasured and displayed and built exhibitions around. Some institutions were embarrassed, tried to hide the revelations, but most embraced the opportunity to clean house, to rebuild their collections on firmer ground. The scandal led to reforms in how art was bought and sold, to new regulations requiring more rigorous documentation and testing. It was painful, expensive, humbling for many people who had considered themselves experts, but ultimately it made the art world stronger. Years later, when Samuel was old enough to understand the full story, when he turned 16 and was thinking seriously about colleges and what path his future career might take, he asked his uncle why they had gone public with his gift, why they hadn't tried to keep it secret and use it for their own financial gain. They were sitting in Marcus's office on a quiet afternoon, and the question was asked with genuine curiosity. Marcus looked at the young man Samuel had become, thoughtful and kind, and he told him the truth. "Because you weren't a secret to exploit," he said. "You were a child who deserved to grow up safe, and the only way to keep you safe was to make sure everyone knew you existed. Secrets make you vulnerable. Truth makes you strong." Samuel nodded, understanding in a way that only someone who had lived it could. He had chosen not to use his gift professionally as an adult, had instead become a teacher, working with children who had unusual talents or abilities, helping them understand that being different wasn't something to fear or hide. But occasionally, when a museum or collector reached out with a genuine mystery, something that could change historical understanding or prevent a significant fraud, Samuel would agree to help. He would touch the painting or sculpture, feel that strange sensation that he had learned to interpret, that tingle of wrongness that meant forgery, or the warm rightness of authenticity. And he would give his answer, never asking for money, just for the truth to matter. The foundation that bore his name continued to grow, funding scholarships for art historians, developing new authentication technologies, and advocating for stricter regulations in the international art market. Marcus ran it until his retirement, then passed it to a board that included both Claire and Samuel. And sometimes, late at night, Samuel would think about that day in the gallery when he was just 8 months old, when his tiny hand touched that fake Caravaggio and everything changed. He didn't remember it, of course, but he had been told the story so many times it felt like a memory. He wondered what it would have been like if his uncle had ignored his reaction, if they had dismissed it as just a crying baby. How many forgeries would still be hanging in museums? How many collectors would still believe they owned masterpieces that were actually lies? But Marcus hadn't ignored it, hadn't dismissed it, and that choice had rippled out in ways none of them could have predicted. Because sometimes the most extraordinary gifts come in the smallest packages, and sometimes the people who laugh are the ones who understand the least. Samuel's gift had seemed impossible, ridiculous even, a baby who could detect art forgery with a touch. But impossible things happen every day, and the people who pay attention, who trust what they see even when it defies explanation, those are the people who change the world. Marcus had trusted what he saw that day, had trusted his nephew's inexplicable ability, and in doing so, had exposed a rot in the art world that had existed for generations. He had protected Samuel by bringing him into the light, by making his gift something celebrated rather than exploited. And Samuel had grown up knowing he was loved not for what he could do, but for who he was. The paintings hung in museums and galleries, some real and some revealed as fake, all of them telling stories about beauty and truth and the human need to create and preserve. And in a small office in Manhattan, a foundation bearing Samuel Hartley's name continued the work of making sure those stories were honest ones. Because in the end, that was what mattered most. Not the value of the art, not the prestige of owning a masterpiece, but the truth. The simple, sometimes uncomfortable, always essential truth. And it had all started with a baby's touch and an uncle who chose to believe.